You think I'm wearing the number 9 shirt for England and it's mine forever. It's not. It's really not. It's yours for 80 minutes. If you're lucky and you play all right, you're going to get it for another 80 minutes. Then there are these little nuances of elite performance from sport that I absolutely live and die by. Maintaining that, whether it be through sport or through work, is in itself a very, very tough task. And that's why you will rarely see teams who consistently win.
Hello and welcome to the Business Leader Podcast. I'm Josh Dornbrack.
And I'm Lucy McPhee, and today we're happy to be joined by Matt Dawson. He is a former England and British and Irish Lions scrum half who was part of England's World Cup winning side in 2003. You may also know him as a former team captain on A Question of Sport and as a commentator for BBC Radio 5 Live.
He also has an impressive history in business. Recently, Matt joined JLL's EMEA Work Dynamics Board in a key strategy role, bringing his extensive experience in leadership, team dynamics, and high-performance environments to advise clients on workplace strategy.
His story is one of overcoming adversity, mastering strategy, the importance of mentorship, and much more. Please enjoy our conversation with Matt Dawson.
Matt Dawson, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. I'm going to start with talking about this.
You've kept that quiet, haven't you?
We thought we'd bring it up.
Is that your research? Is that where all your research has come from?
This is where all my research has come from, very, very dated. But I want to just start with something that I really, really love. I'm just going to take you back to a very special day, the 22nd of November, 2003. And I'm just going to read a little excerpt from you. Your own words, you all know them very well.
It feels like Jack and Ori. You're too young to worry about Jack.
A little bit, yeah.
Sorry, carry on, Josh.
I picked up the envelope, opened the door and scanned the corridor in both directions. There was no one there, but I recognised the handwriting. It belonged to Paul Grayson, my best friend, my halfback partner at Northampton, and the guy with whom I'd made my England debut 8 years ago. It started off funny, making references to lines from Blackadder that only he and I laughed about. And then it got on to the reason both of us were in Australia. Today is your day, he wrote. All your growing has been done. Don't do it on the field. You're in control of the World Cup. This is where you belong. Enjoy it. The rest of the world can rejoice in Matthew Dawson. The finished article. Win the World Cup. It will happen. They'll be looking at you and you'll go. You'll make the difference. So when you think about it all these years later, how does that memory feel for you?
That's a strong start. That is a strong start. There are mixed emotions with that because of who wrote it. Yeah, Paul has. I've always been taught, trained, coached to, as I do to my own kids or teams, about surrounding yourself with great people. Mm. And that's a really easy thing to say. It's increasingly more difficult the more successful you are to surround yourself with good people because you don't actually know their motivations some of the time. And I've definitely made errors in judgment, particularly post my career. But then you have... You're not very many, but you just have a group that are your constant people, and it's mum, it's dad, and it's a handful of friends. Obviously, Elizabeth, my other half. So outside of family, I've only really got a very, very tight group, maybe half a dozen, and Grace is right at the top of that, and. To even sort of listening and thinking about how he was tapping into me and tapping into how he could motivate me, not by, beating your chest and banging the walls and, getting physically pumped up. It was just that very cool, calm, he understood me. And, that's a long time since I've heard words from that letter, but it rings true to me as an individual, which I suppose reaffirms exactly what I'm saying, why people like that are so important to have in your life.
And I want to stay with kind of mentors and people who have had quite an effect on your life. And I want to, again, drawing from the book, someone you mention as someone that you used to play with at Northampton was Wayne Shelford. And for those who don't necessarily know, he's got a fantastic story. I think you know where I'm going with this. The All Blacks versus France in 1986. It was an absolutely brutal game. He lost 3 teeth, had been knocked unconscious. Second half, he got kicked in the groin. He was rolling around on the turf for a little bit, eventually grabbed a water bottle and chucked a little bit of water down the old knickers, he said, to numb the pain. They went on to lose the game. Spoiler alert, he didn't get kicked, he got raked. He actually ended up with a torn scrotum and actually one of his testicles falling out, which, I mean, again, he's a hard man, but, you know, former All Blacks captain Sean Fitzpatrick said he's the kind of guy that you'd run through over glass because he was just such an inspirational figure. What was it like learning from someone like him early on in your career?
Having... Yeah, very much along those same themes. Having people around you that are aligned, and they can be aligned. You know, in rugby terms, you can be aligned physically, mentally, emotionally. You know, even through to work, you still have those characteristics. You know, you're not mates with everybody that you play rugby with. You're not mates with everybody that you go to work with. Meaning, you're not necessarily going to be phoning them up at the weekend to, you know, go to the cinema or whatever. You know, when you cross the line, when you cross the whitewash of a rugby pitch or you go into the dressing room, that sort of breadth of camaraderie and friendship and sort of teamship is really, really important. And, you know, Wayne will always be a very good friend of mine because he was at the end of his career. I was beginning mine. I was looking up to this great All Black captain. He was my first ever number 8 in senior rugby. I mean, that's just insane to think that, you know, when you're talking in amongst the rugby fraternity, he was the guy that used to look after me because he was such a great individual. But the reason why I say all of that is I think those types of relationships have absolutely molded me to be the person I am. I didn't realise at the time having those types of individuals that you can really look up to, but also that you're happy to receive criticism and receive the praise and receive everything from as well, sort of gives you that all-round understanding of yourself and how you should potentially portray yourself in amongst, you know, well, particularly with a rugby team, you can get put down pretty damn quickly. But you learn how to fit in amongst all of those characters when you've got mentors and people like Buck Shelford.
And we'll come back to the playing career. But obviously, you know, you had a very successful career. And then you transitioned over, obviously, into the corporate world. You're broadcasting. You had many, many hats that you were wearing. How many times now in your day-to-day work life do you reflect on the effect that your playing career had on what you're doing now?
I probably a lot more than I actually realise, because it's me. It's my DNA. It's my my ethos, my characteristics. But I think because the rugby, professional sport in general, and then when you're involved in the elite part of the game, it's massively intense. There's so much repetition, there's so much training at the very, very highest level. It can't help but create your default and and become part of your, difficult to say part of your DNA because it's not, but you know, it just becomes intrinsic into who you are. I will say things, I'm sure, in my day-to-day work life. In fact, I was just reminded by one of my colleagues there, Jamie, that we had a very significant conference last week for JLL in Amsterdam. Hundreds of staff, partners. You know, it was a massive event for the business in EMEA, and they asked me to talk about the brand. And I'm talking to the brand and comms team, and we make sure that we've got to take it in this direction, and it's all very corporate. I get it, no problem. Of course, I then ended up standing on stage and going down that line, but then I interacted a bit with the audience, and I ended up going down a rugby analogy. Before you know it, I'm talking about the brand that we represent. We think it's the be all and the end all, and we're top of the tree, middle of the tree, but wherever we think we are. But realistically, we're only in it for a very short time. And in the rugby context, we would talk about borrowing the shirt. You think I'm wearing the number 9 shirt for England, and it's mine forever. It's not. It's really not. It's yours for 80 minutes. If you're lucky and you play all right, you're going to get it for another 80 minutes. So, I was very fortunate. I had an extended England career, but it's now somebody else's jersey. So what do you want that jersey to represent? How do you want to stamp your characteristics, the blueprint of Matt Dawson, whether it be in a rugby jersey or whether it working for JLL? How do I want people to remember the moment that I was involved in that? And I think the psyche of people outside of sport will maybe look at sport and think that's easy to see because there is a shirt. I'm not wearing a JLL branded. You know what I mean? It's or there isn't a World Cup to go and lift and win and party over. So in some ways it's not comparable, but then there are these little nuances of elite performance from sport that I absolutely live and die by, and I think they make a difference to the way that the dynamic of teams work, and it makes a difference to the individuals and how you can sort of maximize your performance and your capabilities at work.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned JLL there. Could you tell us a little bit more about the company and your role that you've recently started?
JLL are a global real estate firm. I work specifically with their REMS, their real estate management services group. I've been in FM and real estate for the last 15 years. Not that I would expect anyone to necessarily know that, because I was probably dancing around on a Strictly Come Dancing dance floor, or I'm on Question of Sport, or doing the radio, or previous to that you're playing rugby, and that's great. But I was always wanting to see if I could test myself in the corporate arena, and so I've had this sort of career in the FM and real estate space, but I've been longing to work for and partner a global business, a global brand that really sort of stands up and above the rest. Again, probably going back, Josh, to the previous conversation of I'm playing for Northampton, or I'm playing for Wasps, and then you're playing for England, and you're in front of 80,000 people, and there's that adrenaline and drive, and I want to do it again, and I wanted to be the best in the world. I'm not going to say I was the best in the world, but that was what my driver was. And I suppose maybe a couple of years ago, I started to reassess about, what are the types of businesses in this industry that I work in that are the version of, playing for England, playing for the British and Irish Lions. And JLL was absolutely one of those, where, we're a leader in all facets of real estate, and the opportunity to work in amongst some pretty outstanding people in such a fast moving, very dynamic and increasingly more sort of strategic part of our clients' agenda is a really exciting proposition. So now I've found myself in maybe, I wouldn't say my next iteration, because rugby seems a long time ago, it's nearly 20 years ago, but I feel like I'm getting a lot of those types of vibes about what I'm doing now that I remember from 20 years ago.
No, I love that. And yeah, it sounds like a really exciting role, and one that you are Yeah, you're perfect for. I want to just kind of come back. You mentioned the Lions there. It's obviously a massive, massive part of your playing career. 97, we have the pass to Jerry Guscott, for example. So, you're very intrinsic to that Lions history. What made your Lions tours so special? We'll get into 2001 because I want to ask you a few questions about that. But why is the Lions so special to you?
I think first and foremost there is a history and a tradition. Go back to that same conversation about the shirt, about the Lion, the players that have worn that shirt, the games that I've watched, that my dad's watched, that my mum's watched, that my grandparents would watch. It's somewhat like fairy tale stuff that when you're growing up. Maybe slightly different now because of the exposure that something like the Lions would get. But when I was growing up, it wasn't about ever playing for the Lions. It was, probably wanting to play for England. But the Lions were a little bit like, where do they tour? You don't really watch it. You don't really see it. But then when I started playing first class rugby at Northampton, and every 4 years those tours were coming along, it very, very quickly narrowed. And again, there's probably a theme. If someone was sort of psychoanalyzing me, there's a theme here of, getting the bit between my teeth and a focus on, I would love to do that. Right. What do I have to do to prepare myself to go and be that individual? And I remember in 93, the tour to New Zealand, I was touring with England, I think England A in Canada, but I was on one of those, Daily Mail lists of up and coming players who had an outside. In fact, I think it was Buck Shelford was saying you should be taking Matt Dawson down to New Zealand, which was fanciful. It's never going to happen. But I suddenly had this. Well, what are we talking about here? This is absolute. So watched the '93 Lions, and that was it. '97 was an absolute goal. A goal for me, but that was the absolute, the best of the best. If I wish that there was a modern day sort of work equivalent where you could draw people from different industries and businesses and sort of create this super business in that industry where all the best players come to meet. And I know a lot of companies will say that they're recruiting all the best in the world, but this was absolutely the chemistry that came on the back of having Irish, English, Scots, Welsh battling against each other to then put that all aside and say, we have got one target down in South Africa when nobody else thinks that we can do it. Only the squad and their immediate family thought that, and probably some of their family didn't think they had a chance. That was extremely unique, and again, I think set a lot of individuals up mentally to be able to overcome adversity, whether it be on the rugby field, at work, in their private lives. Everyone went off in different directions, but we learned a lot about each other and how far you could push yourselves on that tour.
And then, 4 years after that, you're going on the 2001 tour, and it was a bit of a controversial one. You described the bit of tension between the test side and the midweek squad, and very publicised on that. But again, reading from your book, I thought was really interesting. It's like a little time capsule into your mind then. You kind of mentioned Graham Henry described your diary as an age-old story, a betrayal of confidence and your mates for 30 pieces of silver, and claimed it's impossible to contribute to the building and bonding process and play the role of critic at the same time. Scientists will tell you that is a completely different set of brainwaves. It has to be one or the other. And you were quite adamant at pushing back on that. And again, when you reflect on the coaches that you've had, how do you reflect on these times? Obviously, like you've mentioned, it's 20 plus years later. Is there still a part of you that still has that little nagging feeling of injustice? Sometimes
you just got to bite the bullet. Sometimes you got to accept that you're wrong. And I'm more than happy and have publicly, numerous times regret what went on there. I was in the moment. I was, maybe ill-advised. Maybe I didn't have at that time the people around me to just make me stop and question and give me a different view. These things, we all go through these moments. We all, if you have that tendency to be successful, or the perception of being successful, everybody is building you up. They're patting you on the back. They're saying how great you are, probably because they want a piece of it in some way, shape, or form. They want association, a bit of reflective glory. They might want to hang in the coattails. They might be earning off the back of you. It's a very, very lonely, tricky place to be. And I see people like that all the time. I've got lots of friends who have been like that, and I take it upon myself, because of lessons like you've just mentioned, to help them realize that there are other ways and reasons as to why people are doing things around you. And I absolutely should never have done that in a million years. And I'm not proud of the consequences around that. But what can you do? You made a mistake. You're not telling me that anyone who's walking down the streets never made a mistake in their life. It just so happened I did it on a very high, very sort of open forum, with lots of visibility for people to critique it. Okay, but take it on the chin and move on.
Yeah, and again, it's interesting talking about that same incident. You wrote, let's get it straight, the number one problem on the tour was communication. And when you think about leadership in business, some, especially our key audience, say of medium-sized business leaders, sometimes they are growing so quickly that they almost forget to communicate that vision of where they're looking to go. And people, may not be as bought in because they are just taking it day to day and they don't really see the bigger picture. I guess, maybe taking this incident aside, when you're leading teams, how much is that, your difficulties with some coaches or, things that you've learned in your playing career, specifically about communication and vision, how conscious are you of those things?
As I grew a little bit older in my rugby career, I was maybe a little bit more understanding of the influence that you have, and whether that's at home, whether that's at work. There is, if you're running or building your own business, you've got drive, you've got passion, and there has to be incorporated into that. There has to be a very narrow-minded moment or moments in your life where you've just got to absolutely focus on what needs to get done to then be successful, to grow the business, to employ the right people, to market, to compete. There has to be a real laser-like focus. I get that. And I would never try and change people's sort of that mentality around it. But what I would try and get across to my teammates, or say individuals that I know have slightly struggled in that area, is just to have that moment. For me in 2001, unfortunately the consequence was huge, and it lifted a box off me at the time, away from just the excerpt that you wrote, that you read there. There was a real sort of moment of clarity as to, with being too blunt, how much of a dick I was being. And unfortunately, at that time, I didn't have the people around me to gently just, in a way for me to realise I was being a bit of a plum. I actually had to do something really sort of catastrophic to realise that. So being able to guide and educate and give examples to people on how they can still be as passionate and still be focused, but you're actually bringing people with you, opposed to repelling some and taking others. There is no finished article here, but that took me a long time. And it could be as small as when, you write, even now, I'll be super frustrated that something's not been done that I really would like to have been done. But I'm going to start the email in a really positive way to not only engage the reader, but engage me and make me just, take a breath, calm down. Let's think of all the good things that are going on here, and then let's balance it with something else. Whereas, 15, 20 years ago, I was straight in from line one. What do you think? Why are we doing this? Look at the... and so part of that's growing up, part of that's around having those really important people around you that are, you're all doing it for the right reasons. And that communication piece, I think within sport nowadays, it's a very, very different situation. I think that sort of mental health, the communication, the understanding, everyone singing from the same hymn sheet in quite a methodical, dare I say, happy place, and everyone seems to be very conscious of that, which is great. Whereas, it wasn't that long ago where sometimes you were left to fight for yourself a little bit, and therefore the elbows came out and you made a few errors.
And again, comparing your playing days to now, one of the things, we recently did a podcast series called The Turnaround on Exeter Chiefs and their journey kind of through the leagues, and something that Rob Baxter said about team dynamics was quite interesting, and it would be interesting to get your thoughts on it. He basically said momentum of the group is something that's massive. When you think about what Chiefs are going through now, they're going through a little bit of a dip, you know what I mean? They're a little bit up and down, but he said when they were playing their best, the momentum of the group was going the right way. You kind of had your strong characters who would be going one way, and then this big group in the middle that kind of just goes with the momentum. If that sours, then it kind of takes the whole group down with them. And I guess, was that your experience in your playing days? And I guess, have you kind of noticed that in a corporate setting?
Yeah, but definitely momentum is really, it's very influential, positively and negatively. We can't get away from the fact that success or failure, the margins are very, very small. And there could be the smallest of say nuance in a sports team that it might be a player may have moved on, might not have been a world-class international player, but they may well have just fitted in the way that the team plays, and the way that individual bossed the line out was at club level was just, it was done and dusted. The coach, your Rob Baxters of this world, didn't necessarily have to worry about the line out because he knew Joe Bloggs was just on the line out and it was done. And Joe Bloggs moves on and someone else comes in who's very capable, but all of a sudden Rob Baxter's got to coach him, or he's got to find someone to coach him and, educate him in. It's not, it's not mass strategy, but it's taking time out of what Rob Baxter could be doing or what he was doing last year with the rest of the team. So you're slowly eating away at what was making, in this example, Exeter be ruthless and very effective on the rugby field. It only takes one or two of those little moments to lose that little bit of momentum, and no one's noticing it. No one's thinking, oh, it's because we now don't have someone bossing the line out that we're losing loads of games and finishing at the bottom of the table. That's nonsense. But there'll be a few, and it's exactly the same at work. You'll go through passages of, the deals are, every single time you're going for a pitch, you're just winning it. It's like, oh my God, aren't we amazing? This is awesome. We've got all these deals coming in left, right and centre. And then all of a sudden you don't get two. You're like, oh, okay. But, I mean, it doesn't make you you're not a bad team. There will no doubt be some tiny little difference that has maybe been overlooked. And if, given a business of JLL that are 115,000 people, if 5,000 people are not doing what they previously were doing, that's making a massive difference. But the same could be said for a medium-sized business, and probably even more effective in a smaller, medium-sized business, when people start making just little, say shortcuts is a little bit too harsh, but you get a little bit comfy. You're winning deals, the expectation's slightly different. You're not quite as prepared as maybe because you've won all those other deals. So we'll sort of rinse and repeat that because we know we're going to win it. Oh, we didn't win. Well, you didn't win it because you didn't prepare like you did when your backs were against the wall and you were underdogs and you needed to throw everything into it. And you were drawing on resource left, right and centre, and you had a big pitch team. In fact, the whole business were in on the pitch because you were so desperate. Because if you didn't get that business, you were risking that the business was going to fall apart. That maintaining that mentality, whether it be through sport or through work, is in itself a very, very tough task. And that's why you will rarely see teams who consistently win. I mean, we're in an unbelievable era in rugby where you've got South Africa winning it back to back. You had New Zealand winning it back to back in 11 and 15. But then, it's not like New Zealand were going to then just continue winning it every year. Then they dipped away and South Africa have come in. Very rarely do you get any kind of team that are going to win it for decades and decades and decades because there are so many variables. So I find that part of sort of teamwork and teamship absolutely fascinating. But within that, you can actually, to a degree, if you've got the individuals that are committed and disciplined and want to learn and are good within the group, I don't think you're ever really going to be too far away. You might not be winning every game or every bit of business, but that sort of cultural piece, who you represent. I mentioned to you earlier, the shirt that you are representing and what you wear. Will count for a lot, whether you win that business or not. You can walk away and someone say, my case, JLL, they've absolutely smashed it out of the park. It was just a whisker that they did or they didn't win it. But the brand and the people that represent that team walk away with their sort of head held high and it all very enhanced.
It's interesting that you say that because Rob Baxter almost said that, sport is very much like a roller coaster. You come back from an injury and you win man of the match, and then you're up here, and then you drop a few balls the next game, and you're down here, and you should be dropped, and you should be. And he almost said like his job is to kind of flatten that curve, and kind of know what people need. I mean, Clive Woodward was very good at giving you a little bit of a stick when you needed one, for example. But how conscious are you with the coaches that you've had of who really is dialed into the team dynamic, and maybe just you reflecting on yourself as an individual?
Yeah, the coaches that got to know their own individuals, I would. That was definitely a common theme for me to comment on successful coaches. So Wayne Smith from New Zealand, Warren Gatland from Wayne Smith was a coach at Northampton. Warren Gatland, New Zealander, was my coach at Wasps. Ian McGeechan was at Northampton and the Lions. Sir Clive Woodward for England. Sean Edwards at Wasps as well. Those 4 or 5 names. The commonality that I would get from them is that they absolutely took time out to get to know me. Never mind everybody else. I'm sure they did the same. But from my perspective, they. And sometimes I didn't like it, by the way. I mean, you're getting some hard words that you feel at the time are either wrong or inappropriate. But over the course of my career, I then sort of I learned to take on that criticism positively because they are trying to make me a better rugby player. In fact, they're probably trying to make me a better person. I would wrap it up my mind that it was all to do with rugby, but actually there was a lot of personal development from the great coaches, because they realise that if they tap into who you are, then it's going to reflect on the pitch. And importantly, when the pressure is on the pitch, what are you going to revert to? What's your sort of your default? And I reflect on that really positively from those coaches. Even, I remember Clive writing me letters telling me that, I've got so much work to do. I'd be lucky to be in the top 5 scrum halves in the country at the moment. All that sort of stuff at the time. I remember reading this Christmas card, I think it was, and just thinking, what on earth are you talking? How do you think that makes me? But of course he knew that I would go and stew on it and then do something about it myself to make sure that I wasn't 5th choice and that I was going to work my way up.
Yeah.
So that there were lots of different ways that coaches would choose to get to know their individuals, but that for me is really important. That's certainly one sort of facet of my working life, that you can't know everybody, but making as much effort as possible to get to know individuals and what makes them tick gives you more of an opportunity to be successful with teammates, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And no conversation with you, it is complete without talking about 2003. But, Johnny Wilkinson very famously came out and said that the happiest 5 seconds of his life was after he kicked that drop kick. And then afterwards it was like, what's next? That Johnny's a very, very passionate and very, disciplined player. And, even all these years later, there's still a part of him that wishes that he'd enjoyed that a little bit more. You guys obviously enjoyed it a lot, but, 20 years later, how do you feel about that moment? Did you really savor it in a way that's slightly different to Johnny, or, how do you reflect on those days?
I'm not sat here right now. If we haven't won the World Cup, I'm not sat here. Which is a fairly ridiculous statement, actually, because does that shape me any differently if it's gone to the 100th minute and they kick a drop goal to win by 3 points? Am I a different person? Probably not. But because of being part of a winning side, then the opportunity on top of that, if you wanted to grasp an opportunity to develop and learn and go in different directions, it was there on the back of success. And as I said to you before, it's a very fine line. But when you're winning on a global scale, then the opportunities that are in front of you are just significantly more, because you are associated with success. And at work, people it lends itself to want to be successful, whatever version of that you or I or anybody has around success. We either in our own minds, we want to be successful so I can go home and I don't know whether I can talk to the kids or talk to Elizabeth or even talk to myself about I've had a good day today, or I was chuffed to bits to be a part of that deal that we've got over the line. But then also there's, I suppose, because of my background, there is this perception of, well, all of us part of 03, everybody sees us as World Cup winners. Therefore, you're amazing at everything you do. And it's like, well, just hold on a minute. It's a game of rugby and it's 20 years ago. So it's actually a lot to live up to. And there is an ongoing pressure to be that person from 20 years ago. But also there's a part of that I quite like. It's maybe it's feeding the beast, and maybe there will be a downside to it, but I don't know. It gives me, it has always given me, it's given me energy. It's given me purpose. the idea of it's not just about being successful. I suppose it's about completion and enjoyment. I mean, I'm maybe getting a little bit more philosophical the older I am, but having a smile on my face and making the most of these opportunities, what it gives me and my family, chances to do, it's really important that I make the most of that.
Yeah, you're almost flattening your own curve, aren't you?
Yeah.
Got a couple of questions to finish. I know you've been so generous with your time. Thank you for this. If you were to host a dinner party featuring 5 leaders from the world of sport, music, business, whatever, fictional, real, dead, alive, who would you pick?
I mean, Muhammad Ali would be there.
Solid shout.
Daley Thompson was one of my sporting heroes growing up. I don't know whether it was just because of that Lucozade advert when he was running up the stand, but I think that whole idea, the decathlon. I mean, I know the perception of athletics is very, very different to what it was sort of 30 years ago, but that all-conquering athlete. And the computer game where you had to go really quickly with your fingers to make him run Daly's decathlon. So he would definitely make it.
3 more.
I think leaders.
I take it Austin Healey doesn't get the nod then.
He might. I mean, he'd be great value. He really would be great value. And seeing, maybe he would, after dinner, he would probably try and take on Muhammad Ali in a fight or something. So that could be good. That could be good entertainment. I am thinking about someone like really not left field, but something I know nothing about, like Mother Teresa, or do you know what I mean? That's something I know nothing about.
Pick a brain, yeah,
and have that input into the conversation could be fascinating. I'm sure my mum will be listening to this thinking, God, I wish that you were as inquisitive at school, or you would learn as well at school, because I'm like a sponge now, but school was a bit too early for me. It was where I did all my sport. It wasn't where I was focused on my learning, whereas now I'm...
Make up for lost time.
Yeah, I probably am a little bit. How many have I got left? 2?
2 more.
Oh, my God. What's the... Oh, my goodness me. What's the guy's name? Tim... Is it Tim? The guy who created the internet?
Oh, Berners-Lee?
Was it Bernard-Lee?
Berners-Lee.
Berners-Lee?
Yeah.
Was it Tim Berners-Lee?
Yeah. I'm going to fact check that quickly.
Yeah, fact check it. Fact check it.
Tim Berners-Lee.
Yeah. Tim Berners-Lee, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that would be... just the thought of... Yeah, the thought of someone in a room like this probably, and just having an idea to then blow the doors off and...
It'd run away, effectively, from, I'm sure, what he was thinking.
Yeah. And maybe having one of those moments of, what the hell have I just created? What have I done there? Maybe he didn't even realise what he'd done, but there's not going to be many of those moments, that sort of digital age. Yeah, that's pretty damn cool. And maybe what about someone like an astronaut?
Can't go Tim Peake again. There's a couple of Tims.
Yeah, there is a couple of teams. Yeah, maybe let's go Neil Armstrong, because then
Solid, yeah.
Because then we can get him drunk and find out whether it actually
very true
whether it happened.
Yeah. Like
whether it was in a studio in Hollywood somewhere.
Yeah. Exactly. I love that. What a dinner party. That's a really eclectic mix. I like it. Final question for you. What's one fact about Matt Dawson that we can't find online?
Well, okay then. Here's a stat for you that I can still do. I can still do 100 keepy uppies.
There we go. Once an athlete, always an athlete, right?
There you go.
That's what it is. Matt, thank you so much for your time. If people want to follow your journey and maybe find out a little bit more about JLL, how would they do that?
I'm all over LinkedIn. Matt9 Dawson on Instagram. And yeah, listen, if anyone wants to connect with me regarding JLL, then more than happy to discuss ideas and strategies around our clients, and happy to help out.